Listen, we're just going to have a prayer and then we'll get into our chat. So, Lord, thank you that even though I don't see you, you're working. And even though I don't feel it, you're working. And you never stop working. Lord, that's who you are. Thank you, Lord, that you're above us and below us and around us. And I pray that we will hear and accept the challenges that come from from your word today. Amen. Right. I'm going to be clicking. Faith over fear. So, just to remind us all where we are, right? So Jesus has just healed the cripple. He's come to Jerusalem for one of the feasts. We're not sure which one, but he's come into town and he's come in through probably one of the dirtiest places that he could have come in through, right? This Sheep's Gate, whatever that is about, it isn't pleasant. Again, he humbly comes into Jerusalem, right, the most holy city in the planet at that time. And so he's raised this guy from being a cripple, from sitting there amongst the squalor and the pain and the discomfort that he has. And we're going to explore then what happens after that. So, what did happen after that? So I guess my first question is, are you sitting comfortably, right? Are you ready? Because we tend to do that, don't we? We get ourselves comfortable. We get ourselves in our own world. And we challenge anybody to move us on. And I think the problem with that is twofold, as I say it. We sit there, even if it's not the most comfortable place it could be better. But we sit there and we get ensconced in our world. And we don't move on. And secondly, it's very difficult to shift us from there, right? It's very difficult to shoehorn us out of there after we've shoehorned ourselves in there. And the longer we stay there, the harder it becomes to move us on. And today we're going to hear about an uncomfortable truth. Something that's put before the religious leaders of the time. What should have been like a crazy time of celebration. Jesus has just healed a guy who was, 38 years, is it? In pain. And he's done a few of them, right? And it's not just like a one-off. He's done a few on the lead up to this. Raised people from the dead and, just help people along the way. And instead of this celebration that happens as he comes into Jerusalem, the focus is on the rules. And the ruination of the moment, right? We've all been there where you think things are great and things are going well, and somebody just puts a dampener on it straight away. And that's what happens. And it's funny how times change. So soon after that in Acts, we see that Peter and John himself are there, and they see a lame person, and they heal him. And what happens? You can see it there in verse 9. When all the people saw him walking and praising God, they recognized him as the same man who used to sit begging at the temple. They were filled with wonder and amazement. Where was that crowd when Jesus did what he did? There's not a mention of it in the passage. Probably wondering what's going on. But it shouldn't have been a surprise to him because Jesus had done it before, as I say. But instead of celebrating, they're frightened. But again, when Peter and John do it, they reference Moses and they reference to the crowd, hey, why are you so surprised? Moses told you this. Moses told you there'd be a prophet coming. We act in his name. Jesus says the same thing in the passage. I guess the challenge today is, when was the last time we did something that we knew was right, even if it meant getting uncomfortable? Even if it meant questioning the rules that were in place? When was the last time we stood up and said, that's wrong, this is what we should be doing? Jesus wouldn't want us to do that, even though the rules tell us something different. When did we break the rules? Because it was simply the right thing to do. When was the last time we got uncomfortable? Is the fear of standing, the fear of seeming different, holding us back from change? Is setting an example too uncomfortable? I don't know if you've ever been to court. Some of you might have been. Some of you certainly may not want to admit that you've been there. I have. I used to work for don't hate me, right? I used to work for the motor tax. And part of our job was to go with the enforcements, right, for people that deliberately, continually didn't pay their motor tax. We had to go to court. And it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience, right? It's not pleasant. Sweaty palms, shortness of breath, memory loss. And I wasn't even the one in trouble, right? I wasn't even the one who was going to be difficult. But it's amazing how much fear takes hold, right? I had a job to do. I just had to read a piece of paper. But under pressure, we catastrophize, right? We go to the worst possible situation that could happen. We lose completely our clarity of thought. We fear what might happen. But not Jesus. There's a bit of a lesson on how to, state your case, right? So I'm not going to read it because we don't necessarily have time to read all the verses. But, effectively Jesus stands up and he says, look, instead of worrying about the rules, look at what's in front of you. I'm here. I'm the Son of God. I have equality with God. He doesn't, by the way, say that I am the Father. So I think sometimes we figure out, what does this Trinity mean and how does it work, right? He says, I'm equal to the Father. I am my own person. I take my example from the Father. I'm not the Father, I'm the Son. But I'm the real deal. Oh, just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son does the same. It's a pretty well-known story already, right? And I am not proposing to go into this kind of academic description of this passage, right? There's a lot of people who've already done it. It's focused on almost a pre-trial that Jesus goes through, and it's about 18 months before the crucifixion. But one thing that I see in it is it's the first time that the Pharisees go from annoyance, right? They're annoyed with Jesus. He's a pain. He's going to upset the apple cart, right? He's going to annoy us here. They go from there to murderous rage. Right? It says in the passage they want to kill him because he's just blasphemed in front of them, right? He's just said, I'm the Son of God. God's my Father. I'm equal to him. And the problem is people are starting to believe him. People are starting to think, maybe these rules are different. Maybe there's a new guy who's coming here to set us free. And that's what Jesus talks about, right? He talks about raising the dead. He talks about bringing them into life from death, brings light out of darkness. And I'm not sure, all the leaders and all the Pharisees and stuff are bad people, right? I'm sure there's some good ones amongst them. We have some powerful examples, right, where after the conversion of Saul to Paul. And even Jesus, right, in Matthew 23, I think it is, Jesus starts the passage, he goes in and hammers them. But at the start he says, listen to what they say, right? What they say is true, but don't do what they do. But they miss the joy of Jesus bringing healing and light and love. Imagine being so indoctrinated in a particular set of rules that you can't see beyond it. Is it really that different today? Do we stand up for what we believe when we're challenged? Do we act when we should? Do we challenge ourselves when we should? And to be honest, Jesus doesn't make it any easier for the Pharisees. Like, he doesn't give them a chance. He gets right in their faces. I tell you straight, he says, I have the authority of the Father. I can raise anyone from the dead. I have the same power as God. I'm equivalent and equal to God because God's my Father. I have the same will as God. I have the same power and authority as God. And, he talks about raising from the dead. Now, he's already done that. And, of course, we know what happens beyond. But he's also talking figuratively, right? He talks about raising people from darkness into light, about raising people from dead into alive. So he's providing where are we now? He's providing a precursor to that statement. It says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You know that verse where he says, you come through me. And he's starting to shape that message to the people. And he tells them also one thing which probably didn't please them either. We don't shut anyone out. In verse 22, he's very clear. Anybody, we don't shut them out if they want to come. My dad sent me to fix this place. I think you remember, I was only a couple of weeks ago, right? So hopefully you remember. But I stood up here and said, the devil's greatest trick was to say to you, you've got enough time, don't worry about it, put it off till later. Jesus says, urgently, I tell you, come on board. Not, hey, take your time and think about it. Have a little spell of waiting and see how it goes. Urgently, I say. And it's the same today. It's not about waiting. It's not about taking your time. Jesus is here now. The Spirit's here now. That is my Northern Ireland accent. Now. Not tomorrow. Now. And just so he kind of lives up to what the old laws used to say, where, I think it's in Deuteronomy as well, where it says, 2 or 3 witnesses are needed to prove your case. So he says to him, hey, don't just believe me. I'm not like you, where you sycophants all sit together and tell each other how it is, and you all go, oh, yeah, you're right. And then you say something, oh, what do you think? Oh, yeah, you're right. That's not the way it is. I don't need to prove myself, Jesus says. I've got all these witnesses and all these things to prove who I am, just like a trial does. And the other thing about a trial in those days was, very quickly, it was okay if you had a good enough case for you to turn from defendant, from the person who's kind of prosecuting you, to the prosecutor. It was quite often that if you had good witnesses and you had good, stable arguments, that you could turn the tables and put it back onto them. And that's exactly what Jesus does. He says, hey, don't just believe me. I've had people who've come before me to tell you that I'm coming. John the Baptist is the one he uses. And he says, you all liked him for a time until it got a little bit too uncomfortable. But he did tell you he was coming, and he did point me out, and he did say, that's who I am. He says, there's also my actions. And so we've talked a little bit about, healing and raising people from the dead and all the miracles that he was doing. And he also talks about the word. And he says, hey, instead of just reading it like it's a book and then finding the words in it, really look and study what it says. And so there's a lot of debate about, how many prophecies did Jesus fulfill when he came? And there's so many that people have done studies on it. And a guy called Peter Stoner did a survey on it, and he said, even if Jesus fulfilled 48 of the prophecies. And there's believed to be somewhere around 400, 450, somewhere like that. Even if you did 48 of them, that would be one with 157 zeros after it. The chances of one man being able to fulfill those prophecies. That's on 48. So what I've done here is I've said, here's a list of some prophecies that came up. And I've highlighted, we're too far ahead. There we are. And I've stayed away from the ones that you might be able to interpret and people might have a doubt about, right? He was born in Bethlehem. We know he was born in Bethlehem. There's a thing called textual integrity, right? And it's about how you study the texts and the writings that are done about something to prove whether it's true or not on the probability. And there's as much truth and textual integrity that Jesus lives today as there was that Hitler lived in 1940. And we don't doubt that. So Jesus is born in Bethlehem. He's preceded by a messenger. Don't think there's any doubt about that. He's betrayed by a friend for 30 pieces of silver. So there's 4. He's silent before his accusers. He's crucified. He's given vinegar. And he's executed as a thief. That's 8. Just 8. The chances of one person being able to fulfill those 8, that's a lot of zeros. And he's saying to them, how can you not see this? How are you so frightened and stuck in the rules that you can't see this? And you can't change? How can it be? That's over a quadrillion, if anybody knows what a quadrillion is. It's pretty unlikely to happen, and yet, that's who he is. And I read this passage a lot when I was preparing for the talk. And it wasn't the kind of academic part of it. It wasn't the study of the scriptures, although they're important. It was the complete absence of love and joy in this whole passage. The complete absence of it because people are frightened. The guy who was healed barely had a moment to reconcile the fact that he was healed when somebody was on top of him saying, hey, sonny, how come you're walking about with your mat and your bed on the Sabbath? Like, come on. He's just been healed after 38 years. And the first thing this guy can say to him is, hey, none of that, carry on. There's no crowd amazed and wondered by what happened. And they're probably all in those Sabbath feasts. There's a lot of the Pharisees and the religious leaders walking around in that crowd. They're probably all wondering, better not say anything here. The Pharisees themselves, like, can you imagine in this room, right? Imagine there's whatever there is, 100 people plus, and we're all the Pharisees sitting here and we're all touching on what's going on. How many of you would have the strength to stand up and say, stop? We're looking at this wrong. That's what we were expecting of people at that stage. Much easier for us to all go kind of group think, right? Crowd think. Yeah. He said it, she said it, they said it, must be true. Or more likely, he said it, 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 because there wouldn't be much room for women. So we have moved on, hopefully. But there's the absence of pleasure for anybody else. Fear crushes that opportunity. And it's difficult to overcome. But Jesus says, I am an overcomer. You can overcome with my help. If only they'd seen it. Can you imagine then the other side of it? All 100 plus of us get it. We all understand it. Could we sit still? Could you stop yourself going out and telling people? We know in Acts, the Acts of the Apostles, it just swept through the whole place because people got it. Don't be the person Matthew Rudolph spoke about last week. Frightened of taking the step. Missing the opportunity for that greater love that God has for us. Don't remove the joy of living a loving God, of loving a living God, even. Don't let fear paralyze us from reaching out to our community. Don't hide behind, it's always been this way. Because if we do, it will always be that way. And we'll be left behind. And I'm not saying everything has to change. It doesn't have to change in one go. But all we've got to do is challenge ourselves. Jesus is the Son of God. No name is stronger. No religious zealots who have no love or who can't celebrate in the joy of what happens in the resurrection power of Jesus can stop Jesus loving us. No one. And he loves us, as Matthew said. It really spoke to me last week what Matthew said. He sees us where we are, right? And we speak a lot about that. Jesus can meet us where we are. And we think that's great. I'm okay. He can meet us where I am. Jesus is with me where I am. But to Matthew's point, he also sees us where we could be and where we can be and where we will be. And the only way to get from here to there is to put your trust in God and take action. I cannot, no matter how many sci-fi movies we watch, get from here to there without moving. I can't get there without changing my position. Jesus sees you where you can be and will be. Don't let fear paralyze you. Personally speaking, I believe this passage is a rallying call for us. A rallying call for DEC. We're moving forward. I have stood here before. I've had the honor of standing here before. The sea of faces, some are familiar, many are not. We're moving. We're growing. We're changing. And that is a good thing. It's an exciting thing. Isn't it? Yes. Thank you. Wow, I'm hoping it's a bit more exciting than that. New people are coming to us here and online. And I can tell you, in some of the people that I've talked to, they came here because they found us online. So both are important. Our role is to embrace, I'm going to call you the newbies, and go to them. Find a way to reach unchurched people. Invite them in and show them who Jesus is, not what religion is. Who Jesus is. Find a way to connect. Let's not close the doors and the gates. Let's open the doors and have people come in and let's talk to them. Our role is that. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Who can tell me what the next bit is? Just your church neighbours? Just the people who come in here on a Sunday? Absolutely not. Just those people. Make a practical way for people to come in. And then it's up to us to figure out a way to talk to them. And I know it's a challenge. I know it's difficult. There's nothing else to say about that. It's difficult. But that's what God calls us to do. Again, I urge you, challenge yourselves, bring forward ideas, get involved. I know many new folks have got involved. I think, Reuben, you're doing a great job. And thank you for that. But on the back of this talk, next week is a gift. Hello Sunday next week. An opportunity for you to understand what the ministries are in the church, what part you can play in the church. My encouragement is to get involved. Thank you all. God bless you.